In the vast expanse of the Galactic Military Academy, nestled among the crystalline spires of the capital world Nova Prime, excitement filled the air like static before a storm. The Grand Hall, with its soaring ceilings and holographic displays, hosted thousands of beings from across the galaxy. Light from the system's twin suns streamed through the transparent dome above, casting rainbow patterns across the gathered crowd. Director Han stood at the central podium, his silver uniform gleaming under the artificial lights. His tall, slender frame and blue-tinted skin marked him as a member of the respected luminary species. The crowd fell silent as he raised his hand, the traditional gesture for attention. Among the sea of alien faces, 4 human cadets sat in the middle row. Lee, Kim, Park, and Song. They looked ordinary compared to the exotic species around them. Lee, the oldest of the group, kept her back straight and face neutral despite the curious stares. Next to her, Kim fiddled with her datapad, while Park and Song exchanged quiet whispers. "Welcome to the 100th year of our most prestigious event." Director Han's voice carried through the hall. "Today marks a historic moment. For the first time, we welcome cadets from Earth, classified as a death world." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A group of tall, scaled beings near the front turned to look at the humans with their multiple eyes. Some showed clear doubt, others mild interest, but most displayed poorly hidden disdain. "The simulation ahead of you will test more than just your tactical knowledge," Director Han continued. "It will challenge your ability to adapt, to think, and to lead. Each team will manage a complete military campaign spanning 10 years of simulated time." Commander Kang watched from his position on the observation deck, his cybernetic eyes zooming in on various reactions throughout the hall. As one of the Academy's senior instructors, he had seen countless simulations, but this one felt different. His gaze lingered on the human cadets, noting their calm demeanor. "You will connect to our neural interface systems," Director Han explained, gesturing to the sleek headsets being distributed. "These will allow you to control your forces as naturally as moving your own body. The simulation environment replicates real combat conditions with perfect accuracy." A tall, graceful cadet from the ethereal collective raised a luminescent tendril. "Director, is it wise to allow less advanced species to access such sophisticated technology?" The question dripped with polite venom, clearly aimed at the human team. Before Director Han could respond, Lee stood up. Her movement was smooth, controlled, and somehow more noticeable than the floating alien who had just spoken. "We may be from a death world," she said, her voice clear and steady, "but that means we understand survival better than most." The hall grew quiet. Even those who had been whispering among themselves turned to watch. Lee's words carried no anger, no defense, just simple fact. Director Han nodded approvingly. "Earth's classification as a death world is precisely why these cadets are here. Their planet has shaped them in ways we might not understand, but cannot ignore." Commander Kang's cybernetic eye recorded the subtle shifts in the room's atmosphere. He noticed how the human cadets remained perfectly still while other species constantly moved, adjusted, or swayed. It was the stillness of predators, he realized, the calm before action. "The simulation begins in 1 hour," Director Han announced. "Teams, proceed to your assigned chambers for preparation. Remember, you are all here because you represent the finest military minds of your respective worlds. May the best strategy prevail." As the crowd began to move, Commander Kang watched the 4 humans gather their equipment. They moved with purpose, their coordination unconscious but perfect. Other species might see them as primitive, but Kang had studied Earth's history. He knew that humans had mastered the art of warfare long before they reached the stars. A junior instructor approached Kang, data tablet in hand. "Sir, the odds makers are giving the human team less than a 1% chance of finishing the simulation, let alone winning it." Kang's cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on the retreating backs of the human cadets. "Those odds," he said quietly, "assume they will fight like we do." A small smile crossed his face. I suspect we're about to learn why Deathworlders have survived so long. The Grand Hall slowly emptied, its holographic displays showing the countdown to simulation start. In their preparation chamber, the human team began reviewing their resources, their movements efficient and purposeful. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous warriors are the ones they underestimate. Through it all, Director Hand stood at his podium, watching the pieces fall into place for what would become one of the most memorable events in Academy history. The Centennial Simulation was about to begin, and with it, a demonstration of why humans had earned their reputation as one of the most resilient species in the known universe. The preparation chamber assigned to the human team glowed with soft blue light from the holographic displays. Unlike the ornate chambers given to other species, theirs was simple and functional. Metal walls surrounded them, bare except for the neural interface stations and the main tactical display floating in the center of the room. Leaf stood before the central hologram, her fingers moving through the light as she studied their starting position. The display showed their forces as small red dots scattered across a three-dimensional map of the simulation space. Compared to the massive fleets assigned to other teams, their resources looked like drops in an ocean. They really didn't give us much to work with, Park said, walking around the display. He pulled up detailed information about their ships and supplies. The numbers made him shake his head. Most teams got at least 3 times what we have. Kim sat at one of the neural interface stations, adjusting the headset's fit. Her dark eyes reflected the dancing lights of the hologram as she smiled. Look at the bright side. Less to lose means more to gain. She pulled up Earth's historical records on her datapad. Remember the stories about ancient naval battles, small forces against massive fleets. Song, barely 20 and the newest addition to their team, stood quietly in the corner. His fingers moved rapidly across his datapad as he compared their resources to historical Earth conflicts. The Battle of Myeongyang, he said suddenly. Admiral Yi Sun-sin faced 300 ships with just 13 of his own. Lee nodded, a slight smile crossing her face, and won decisively. But we need more than just historical parallels. We need to think like our ancestors while using these new tools. She gestured to the neural interfaces. The other teams will expect us to follow standard galactic doctrine. Establish a defensive perimeter, fortify key positions, build up our forces. Which is exactly why we won't, Park added, pulling up a simulation of standard galactic battle formations. They've designed their entire strategy around countering these traditional approaches. Kim stood up and joined the others at the main display. Earth's military history is full of examples where smaller forces defeated larger ones. Guerrilla warfare, asymmetric combat, unconventional tactics. She manipulated the hologram, highlighting various sectors of space. Look at these asteroid fields, dense nebulas, solar storm regions. Everyone else will avoid these as hazards. But we see opportunities. Song finished, his eyes lighting up with understanding. He'd grown up in a mining colony on Mars, where survival meant working with hostile environments, not against them. Lee expanded the tactical display, showing the full scope of their operational area. The neural interface gives us perfect control over our forces, but more importantly, it lets us coordinate in ways our ancestors could only dream of. She turned to face her team. We're going to show them why humans are different. Park started marking positions on the map. If we split our forces into smaller groups, we can map out their patrol patterns without being detected. Find the gaps in their sensor coverage. Better yet, Kim added, we can use their own assumptions against them. They think we're primitive. They'll expect us to make mistakes, to act predictably. Her smile turned predatory. So let's give them exactly what they expect. At first, Song had been quiet, but now he stepped forward. I've been analyzing the simulation parameters. The AI is programmed to respond to standard tactical doctrines. But Earth warfare, he paused, looking at his teammates. Earth warfare has never been standard. Lee nodded, pride showing in her expression. On Earth, their team had trained together for months before coming to the academy. While other species relied on pure tactical theory, humans had millennia of actual combat experience to draw from. Their planet's harsh conditions had taught them to adapt, to find solutions where none seemed possible. "Here's what we're going to do," Lee said, beginning to outline their strategy. As she spoke, the holographic display shifted, showing various phases of their plan. It was bold, unconventional, and completely unlike anything the Academy had seen before. The other teams might have more ships, more resources, and more conventional military power. But they didn't have the one thing that made humans unique: the ability to turn disadvantages into advantages, to find strength in desperate situations, to think beyond established rules when survival demanded it. As the countdown to simulation start continued, the human team finalized their preparations. They fitted their neural interfaces, ran last-minute checks on their systems, and shared one final look of determination. In less than an hour, they would show the galaxy why Deathworld species were not to be underestimated. The chamber's lights dimmed slightly, signaling the 5-minute warning. Lee stood before her team, her expression confident and calm. "Remember," she said quietly, "everything they see as our weakness is actually our strength. We're not just fighting for victory. We're fighting to show them what humans can do." The neural interface stations hummed to life, ready to connect their minds to the simulation. In the silence of their preparation chamber, 4 humans prepared to teach the galaxy a lesson about warfare that it would never forget. The main observation chamber of the Galactic Military Academy hummed with quiet energy as the massive holographic display sprang to life. Hundreds of senior officers and instructors watched as thousands of ships materialized across the simulated battle space. The room's curved walls displayed individual team feeds, showing the first moves of each competing squad. Director Hand stood at the central control station, his attention divided between multiple tactical feeds. Around him, the alien observers nodded approvingly as most teams followed expected protocols. The ethereal collective's forces moved in perfect geometric formations. The Silicon Alliance established defensive grids with mathematical precision. Then everyone noticed the human display. "What are they doing?" The question came from Admiral Wren, his crystalline features reflecting confusion as he watched the human forces split apart. Instead of forming standard battle groups, their small fleet broke into dozens of tiny units, each moving in different directions. Lee and her team, connected through their neural interfaces, executed their plan with smooth precision. Their consciousness flowed through the simulation, guiding their ships with the instincts honed by countless training sessions. Each team member controlled their section of forces, but their minds worked in perfect harmony. "They're scattering their forces," Commander King observed, his cybernetic eye recording every movement. No defensive formations, no resource securing, no attempt to establish supply lines. Despite his neutral tone, a hint of interest crept into his voice. In their simulation pod, the human team moved with quiet confidence. Lee directed her units toward a dense asteroid field that other teams had marked as too dangerous for military operations. Kim's forces skimmed the edge of a radiation storm, using the interference to mask their movements. Park guided his ships through the shadows of gas giants, while Song's units probed the edges of enemy territories. The alien observers watched in growing confusion as the humans ignored every strategic choke point and resource-rich sector. Their ships moved in patterns that seemed random, almost chaotic to traditional military analysts. "They'd lost their minds," declared a senior instructor from the Silicon Alliance. "This violates every principle of unified command structure. Their forces will be picked off one by one." But Director Han remained silent, his eyes narrowing as he studied the human movements more closely. Something about their pattern held his memory, a lecture he'd once attended about Earth's military history. In their pod, the human team worked in focused silence, their neural links allowing instant communication without words. Their small units probed and tested the edges of enemy formations, gathering data about response times and patrol patterns. "Look at their reaction times." Kim's thought echoed through their shared neural space. They're following standard response protocols exactly as we predicted. Lee acknowledged with a slight nod, her mind already processing the information flowing in from their scattered forces. Every probe, every seemingly random movement, built a detailed picture of their opponent's strategies and weaknesses. The other teams, following their traditional doctrines, had established their bases and begun fortifying their positions. Their massive fleets moved in coordinated patterns, protecting vital supply lines and resource nodes. To them, the humans' actions looked like the desperate moves of an inexperienced force. Scan complete on Sector 7. Song reported through the neural link. His units had just mapped another patrol route without being detected. Their sensor coverage has the same gaps we saw in training simulations. Park's units slipped through one of these gaps, using a technique that would have been familiar to Earth's ancient submarine commanders. Confirmed, they're not watching the vertical plane at all. In the observation chamber, the alien observers continued their criticism of the human strategy. They pointed out every violation of established military doctrine, every departure from accepted tactical wisdom. But Director Han noticed something they missed. The humans hadn't lost a single ship yet. Interesting, he murmured, mostly to himself. They're not fighting the way we expect. They're fighting the way they learned on Earth. The human team's neural link hummed with shared purpose as they entered the next phase of their plan. Their scattered forces had mapped every weakness, every blind spot in their opponent's defenses. Now they would show the galaxy why Earth's military history was worth studying. All units in position, Lee's thought carried calm authority. Begin Phase 2. The observation chamber was about to witness something unprecedented. The humans weren't just ignoring traditional doctrine. They were rewriting it. Their scattered forces were not a sign of desperation or inexperience, but the carefully placed pieces of a strategy that no one else had considered. As the simulation timer marked 15 minutes, the true nature of the human strategy was about to reveal itself. The galaxy was about to learn why underestimating a species from a death world was a serious mistake. The simulation chamber erupted with sudden activity as the human team's strategy unfolded. Their seemingly scattered forces transformed into a coordinated web of attacks, striking simultaneously across multiple sectors. The observation deck fell silent as the tactical displays lit up with unexpected alerts. Lee's mind flowed through the neural interface, directing their forces with the smooth precision of a conductor leading an orchestra. Each small unit, previously dismissed as lost or tactically insignificant, now revealed its true purpose. Strike Group Alpha, engage, her thought echoed through their shared neural space. Park's forces emerged from the asteroid field, attacking supply convoys that had followed the same predictable routes for the past 15 minutes. The enemy ships, caught completely off guard, scattered in disarray. Kim's units burst from the cover of the radiation storm, their smaller numbers hidden by the electromagnetic interference. They struck at communication relay stations that larger forces had left lightly defended, considering them too minor to protect heavily. Look at their response patterns. Song transmitted through the neural link, his consciousness tracking enemy movements. They're following standard protocols exactly as we predicted, pulling forces from their main fleets to defend secondary targets. In the observation chamber, Director Han watched as the human strategy revealed itself. The alien observers who had criticized their apparent lack of coordination now stood silent, their earlier mockery forgotten as they witnessed something unprecedented. Remarkable, Commander Kang murmured, his cybernetic eye recording every detail of the unfolding battle. They're not just attacking ships and stations. They're attacking the entire concept of standard military doctrine. Park's forces struck with precision at key supply nodes, using the chaos of their first attacks to mask their true objectives. Enemy commanders, trained in traditional galactic warfare, struggled to respond to attacks that violated every principle they had learned. Their command structure is fragmenting, Kim reported, her units already moving to exploit new weaknesses. They're trying to maintain formation while defending too many targets at once. The human team had turned their small numbers into an advantage. While their opponents commanded massive fleets that needed careful coordination, the humans' limited forces moved with the agility of a street fighter against a slower, stronger opponent. Song's resource management proved crucial as their attacks continued. Every captured supply cache, every disabled enemy ship, added to their capabilities. He redirected resources with lightning speed, supporting whatever unit needed them most at any given moment. Phase 2 completion at 60%, Lee announced through the neural link. Her consciousness expanded through their shared connection, feeling the ebb and flow of battle like a physical force, initiating secondary strike patterns. The observation deck's tactical displays struggled to keep up with the humans' movements. Their attacks seemed to come from everywhere at once, each strike precisely calculated to cause maximum disruption with minimum force. A senior instructor from the Ethereal Collective shook his head in disbelief. This isn't warfare as we understand it. They're not trying to defeat their opponent's forces. They're dismantling their ability to fight at all. Commander Kang nodded slowly. They learned this on Earth. He explained to the bewildered observers. When you evolve on a death world, you learn to win by any means necessary. Traditional doctrine means nothing when survival is at stake. In their simulation pod, the human team worked in perfect synchronization. Their neural interfaces hummed with shared purpose as they executed maneuvers that would have been impossible to coordinate through conventional means. Park's units struck at enemy formations like wolves attacking larger prey, darting in to cause damage before disappearing back into the asteroid fields. Kim's forces turned enemy strongpoints into traps, using their opponents' defensive positions against them. Song continued his masterful management of their growing resource pool, ensuring no capture went to waste. Lee watched it all through their shared neural space, adjusting their strategy moment by moment. Earth's military history had taught humans that no battle plan survived contact with the enemy. But it had also taught them how to adapt and thrive in chaos. The simulation timer showed barely 20 minutes had passed, but already the carefully structured operations of their opponents were falling apart. The humans hadn't just studied their enemies' tactics, they had understood and exploited the assumptions behind those tactics. Phase 2 completion at 90%, Lee announced to her team. Prepare for Phase 3 initialization. Their neural links carried not just her words but her absolute confidence in their success. The observation chamber had grown so quiet that the hum of the holographic displays seemed loud. They were watching more than just a surprising tactical victory. They were witnessing the emergence of a completely new form of warfare, born from the harsh lessons of Earth's history and executed with technologies their ancestors could never have imagined. The great observation chamber of the Galactic Military Academy had fallen into a deep silence as the simulation reached its 30-minute mark. The holographic displays showed a battlefield that defied all conventional understanding of military strategy. What had begun as seemingly random attacks had transformed into a masterpiece of coordinated warfare. Commander Kang stood at his station, his cybernetic eye recording every detail of the unfolding scene. The simulation's main AI was sending warning signals. Its protocols were being stretched beyond their designed limits as it tried to process the humans' unconventional tactics. Look at this pattern, he said, gesturing to the tactical display. Every time our forces adapt to one of their strategies, they've already moved on to something new. They're not just fighting. They're learning and evolving their tactics in real time. The human team's neural interfaces glowed with steady blue light as they worked in perfect harmony. Lee's consciousness flowed through their shared neural space, directing their forces with a precision that seemed almost impossible given their limited numbers. Phase 3 proceeding as planned, Kim reported through their neural link. Her units had just completed another series of lightning strikes against enemy supply lines, each attack precisely timed to cause maximum disruption. Park's forces emerged from the cover of a dense nebula, striking at targets that seemed randomly chosen, but were actually vital nodes in the enemy's command structure. Confirmed hits on primary targets. Their response times are getting slower with each attack. Director Han watched the tactical displays with growing amazement. The human forces moved like water, flowing around obstacles and finding paths of least resistance that other species had never considered. Their smaller numbers, initially seen as a disadvantage, had become their greatest strength. The simulation AI is reporting unusual patterns, announced one of the technical observers. It's registering combat behaviors that fall outside its programmed parameters for rational military strategy. Som's voice echoed through the human team's neural link. Enemy forces are starting to break formation. They're abandoning standard response protocols. His consciousness tracked the chaos spreading through enemy ranks as their carefully planned strategies crumbled. In the observation chamber, alien military experts struggled to understand what they were seeing. The humans had turned their own understanding of warfare upside down. Instead of meeting strength with strength, they had transformed the entire battlefield into a web of interconnected weaknesses they could exploit. They're fighting like their ancestors, Commander Kang explained to the bewildered observers. Earth's military history is full of examples where smaller forces defeated larger ones through adaptation and unconventional thinking. We designed this simulation to test traditional galactic warfare. They're showing us something entirely different. Lee's team continued their coordinated assault, each movement building upon the last. Their neural interfaces allowed them to share not just information but instincts and insights, creating a level of coordination that bordered on precognition. Look at their resource management, another observer noted. They're not just capturing supplies, they're turning every victory, no matter how small, into an advantage for their next attack. The simulation's AI continued to send warning signals as it tried to process strategies that defied its basic programming. The humans weren't following any known doctrine or pattern. Their attacks seemed to come from everywhere at once, each strike perfectly timed to support the others. Director Han finally understood what he was witnessing. "This isn't just tactical brilliance," he said quietly. "This is evolution in action. They're showing us why Deathworld species survive. They never stop adapting, never stop finding new ways to overcome challenges." The human team's neural link hummed with shared purpose as they entered the final stages of their plan. What had looked like chaos to outside observers was actually a carefully orchestrated performance, each piece moving in perfect harmony with the others. Enemy command structure is collapsing, Song reported through their neural space. Their responses are becoming increasingly predictable as they fall back on basic training protocols. The observation chamber's displays showed the true scale of what the humans had achieved. In just 30 minutes, they had completely transformed the nature of the simulation. Their opponents' carefully structured operations had been reduced to desperate defensive actions, each response making them more vulnerable to the next attack. Commander Kang smiled slightly as he watched the human strategy continue to unfold. "We thought we were testing their ability to fight our way," he said to no one in particular. "Instead, they're teaching us why their way of fighting has kept them alive on one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy." The simulation timer moved past the 30-minute mark as the human team prepared for their final phase. They had done more than just win a military exercise. They had demonstrated why underestimating a species from a death world was a serious mistake. The holographic displays in the Grand Hall flickered with a cascade of data as the simulation reached its 45th minute. The human team's final movements played out across the tactical screens with devastating efficiency. What had begun as an apparent disadvantage, their minimal resources and small numbers, had transformed into an overwhelming victory. Lee guided her team through their last coordinated strikes, their neural interfaces humming with shared purpose. Enemy formations collapsed under precisely targeted attacks, their defensive strategies falling apart as the humans exploited weaknesses no one else had even considered. Final phase complete, Kim reported through their neural link. Her forces had just finished dismantling the last major enemy command center, using tactics that seemed to defy conventional military logic. Park's units emerged from their hidden positions across the battlefield, revealing the true extent of their strategic control. What other teams had dismissed as empty space had actually been filled with human forces, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Song's resource management had turned their initial disadvantage into an insurmountable lead. Every captured supply cache, every disabled enemy ship had been immediately repurposed to support their next offensive. The efficiency of his operations had multiplied their fighting power far beyond what should have been possible. In the observation chamber, Director Han watched as the simulation's victory conditions triggered one after another. The humans hadn't just won. They had completely rewritten the rules of engagement. Their approach had rendered traditional galactic military doctrine obsolete in less than an hour. "Impossible," whispered a senior instructor from the Silicon Alliance. They compressed 10 years of simulated warfare into 60 minutes. "This can't be right." Commander Kang's cybernetic eye recorded the final moments as the simulation's AI processed the results. "They didn't just win the battles," he explained. "They changed the nature of warfare itself. Every move they made forced their opponents to fight on human terms." The neural interfaces gently powered down as the simulation came to its end. Lee and her team removed their headsets, their movements calm and controlled despite the historic achievement they had just accomplished. Simulation complete. The AI's voice echoed through the Grand Hall. "Victory conditions achieved. Human team has established total strategic dominance across all sectors." The silence that followed was absolute. Other teams stared at their displays, trying to understand how their carefully planned strategies had been so completely undone. The ethereal collective's representatives, who had been so dismissive of the primitive humans, stood motionless in shock. Director Han approached the human team's chamber as they emerged. Their faces showed no triumph, no celebration, only the quiet confidence of those who had done exactly what they had trained to do. "You've demonstrated something remarkable here," he said, his voice carrying through the silent hall. "Not just tactical superiority, but a fundamental understanding of warfare that we had never considered." Lee stepped forward, speaking for her team. "On Earth, we learned that survival often means adapting to impossible situations. Today, we simply applied those lessons on a larger scale." The other teams gathered around their displays, reviewing the simulation data. They watched in stunned disbelief as the human strategy revealed itself in replay. What had seemed like chaos was actually a perfectly choreographed sequence of attacks, each move setting up 3 more, each victory creating new opportunities. Commander Kang's analysis flowed across the main screens, highlighting key moments in the humans' victory. "Look at how they used our own assumptions against us," he pointed out. "Every time we thought they were making a mistake, they were actually setting up their next victory." The Grand Hall began to fill with voices as the initial shock wore off. Military experts from across the galaxy debated what they had just witnessed. The humans had done more than win a simulation. They had demonstrated why Deathworld species were a force to be reckoned with. 10 years of warfare, completed in 1 hour, Director Han announced to the assembled crowd. "The human team has shown us that our understanding of military strategy needs to be completely reevaluated." Lee and her team stood together, their presence a quiet reminder that sometimes the most dangerous opponents are the ones you underestimate. They had entered the simulation as representatives of a primitive world. They emerged as teachers, showing the galaxy why humans had survived and thrived on one of the most dangerous planets in known space. The victory wouldn't just change the Academy's training programs, it would transform the way the galaxy thought about warfare itself. The humans had proven that adaptation, innovation, and unconventional thinking could overcome any technological or numerical advantage. As the final analysis began, one thing became clear to everyone in the Grand Hall. The age of traditional galactic warfare was over. The humans had brought their Death World experiences to the stars, and nothing would ever be the same. The days following the simulation brought a flurry of activity to the Galactic Military Academy. Teams of analysts worked around the clock, reviewing every moment of the human victory. In the Great Library, military experts from across the galaxy gathered to study the data, their discussions echoing through the ancient halls. Commander Kang led the initial analysis, his cybernetic eye replaying key moments of the simulation. The human team's strategy had been more than just effective. It had revealed fundamental truths about warfare that the galaxy had never considered. "Look at this moment," he would say, showing how the humans turned apparent retreats into devastating attacks. They didn't just break the rules. They proved the rules were wrong to begin with. The 4 human cadets, Lee, Kim, Park, and Song, found themselves the center of intense attention. Other students who had dismissed them as primitives now watched them with new respect. The Academy's instructors sought their insight, eager to understand the thinking behind their victory. Director Han called them to his office, a space filled with holographic displays showing battle records from across the galaxy. "Your victory has done more than win a competition," he told them. "You've shown us that we need to rethink everything we thought we knew about warfare." Lee stood with her team, their posture relaxed but alert, the stance of predators at rest. "We didn't do anything special," she explained. "We just applied the lessons our species learned over thousands of years on Earth." The Academy's teaching programs underwent immediate revision. Instructors who had spent decades teaching traditional doctrine now found themselves studying Earth's military history. The concepts seemed strange at first: guerrilla warfare, asymmetric combat, adaptive strategy, but their effectiveness was undeniable. The Hour War, as students began calling the simulation, became a central part of the Academy's curriculum. Future cadets would study how a small team from a death world had achieved in 1 hour what should have taken 10 years. Kim and Park found themselves giving lectures to senior military officials, explaining how their death world experience shaped their understanding of combat. On Earth, Kim would explain, "Every living thing must adapt or die." We applied that same principle to space warfare. Song's resource management techniques became the subject of intense study. He showed how smaller forces could turn their limitations into advantages, using efficiency and timing to overcome overwhelming odds. In the Academy's simulation chambers, new scenarios were designed based on the human victory. Students from across the galaxy learned to think differently about warfare, to see opportunities where others saw only obstacles. The impact spread beyond the Academy. Military forces throughout the galaxy began incorporating human tactical concepts into their training. The term Earth-style warfare entered the galactic lexicon, representing a new approach to combat that valued adaptation over tradition. Lee and her team spent their final days at the Academy helping to document their strategies. They worked with the simulation AI, teaching it to understand the principles behind their victory. Future generations would face challenges based on their innovative approach. As the 4 humans prepared to return to Earth, Director Han organized a formal ceremony. The Great Hall, where their victory had taken place, filled with representatives from across the galaxy. The same beings who had once dismissed humans as primitives now came to honor their achievement. "You've given us more than new tactics," Director Han announced to the assembled crowd. "You've shown us why death world species survive. Because they never stop learning, never stop adapting, never accept limitations." The human team stood together one last time in the simulation chamber where they had made history. The neural interfaces that had helped them demonstrate their skills now sat silent, but their achievement would echo through time. "Remember," Lee told the gathered students, "the greatest victory isn't winning the battle. It's changing how battles are fought." As they left the Academy, they passed under an arch newly inscribed with words that would inspire future generations. "Innovation surpasses tradition." The humans had proved that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't technology or numbers, but the ability to think differently. The Hour War marked more than just a victory in a simulation. It represented the moment when the galaxy learned that underestimating humans, or any death world species, was a mistake that would never be made again. The future of warfare had changed, and it had changed because 4 humans had shown the galaxy a new way to fight.